Back to the Arbitrage YouTube channel. In today's class, we're learning how to make this beautiful butterfly bubu. It's a beginner friendly class and it's really beautiful. If this is something you like to learn, kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. So to make this butterfly bubu, I'm going to be working with this Ankara fabric, and the length of the Ankara fabric is 45 inches, so the yard can be as long as you want. So I'm going to be folding this fabric into 4, and I have done that, and I'll explain how I folded my fabric using this pattern paper. Okay, so the short side of this pattern paper that we have here, I'm going to assume that to be the length of my Ankara, which is 45 inches, and then the longer part that we have here, I'll assume that to be the yard. Okay, so now the measurement that you will need to fold your fabric is the length of the person you're making this for, which in this case, the length I'm working with, the total length from the shoulder to the floor length is 56 inches, including the seam allowance. So now that 56 inches, I'm going to be folding it using the length side. Remember, the total length that we can get from our Ankara is 45 inches. So I'm going to be using the yard to fold my length, because already the length is 56 inches, and then I'm cutting both front and back together. So the amount of fabric you're going to need is 56 inches for front and 56 inches for back, and if you had that, that's going to be around 112 inches. So for this size, you need about 3 yards for that. I hope you understand that. So now, if I cut my 112 inches on the yardage side, so the first thing I'm going to do is to fold that into 2. So folding it into 2 like this means that I have my front and back length folded together. That's 56 inches for the front and 56 inches for the back also. So this is going to be the length. So the next thing now is to put it on fold so that we can have a half scale bodice. So the measurement that you're going to use to fold that is your shoulder, is your neck measurement. That's the neck point. Okay, so like I was explaining, this is the measurement you need to fold it. So let's assume this to be the back of our bodice. So you're going to measure from the center of your neckline here all the way to where you want the sleeve to stop. Okay, so from your center back, now you measure through your shoulder, and then you measure to your elbow point or your wrist or wherever it is you want the length of this bubu to stop. You know, it's like a kimono, which means we are cutting both the bodies and the sleeves together. So you measure to where you want your sleeves to stop. So whatever measurement you have there is going to be half of the full body. Remember, we are folding it into 2 now. So this is going to be for one side, while the other one that we have here is going to be for the other side. So for me, that measurement is 22.5 inches. And remember, we said 45 inches is the total length of an Ankara fabric. So I'm just exhausting what I have there. 45 inches divided by 2 is going to give me the 22.5. So I have 22.5 for one side and 22.5 for the other side. So that is what I have folded here. I folded my fabric into 2 using the length on the yard side like this, and then I later folded it into 4 using the total length that I have for my Ankara, which is 45 inches. So by the time I fold it into 4, I'm going to have 22.5 inches for each of the sides. So making this is actually very simple. Once you get the folding part, it's not going to be having any joining on the shoulder area. I'm cutting everything together. You just need to remove your neckline and you're good to go. So now the neckline that I'm working with for this, I'm going to work with a neck width of 3.5 inches. I don't want it too wide. You can do 3 inches, you can do 4 inches, whatever it is that you want to do is fine. And then I'm going to work with a neck depth of 1 inch for the back. Okay, so I'm going to remove the back neckline first before removing the front neckline. So you can do 1 inch or 1.5 inches. So now, using my curved ruler, I'm going to connect that. So after cutting off my back neckline, remember there is no shoulder seam, I have to open it up so that I can cut out the front also. Okay, so I'm just considering, because I'm still going to turn it with the facing, I'll just leave the neck width at 3 inches because I don't want it too wide. So by the time I turn it out, I'm going to have around 3.5 inches. So 3 inches by 1 inch for the back neckline, and then I'm going to connect it like this, and then I'll cut this out. Okay, so that is my neckline for the back. So you may want to notch this point here, because we don't have a shoulder seam to guide us to know where the shoulder is. So you can notch it a bit so that by the time you open it up, you are not going to be confused. And then on the hem on the other side here, I'm also going to notch it so that I will know where the front and back stop. So this here is my front and this is my back. So now after cutting it like this, I'm going to open it up and then remove the back. So what I'm going to do basically, so let's assume this to be our fabric again. I'm going to remove the neckline. Okay, so now let's assume I have removed my back neckline like this, and then I notched it here to indicate my neck point, and also here. So now to cut out my front neckline, what I'm going to do is just to open this up like this, and then I'm going to remove the back. Remember, we have the front here and the back. So I'm going to remove the back now. You can see I've separated the back from the front, and then I'm going to refold my front neckline so that I can measure whatever it is that I want. So that is what I'm going to do to this Ankara now. Okay, so I folded it now, and then I have this notch here to indicate my shoulder point. That's where my front starts. So now remember, we used 1 inch for the neck depth of the front of the back. Now I want to increase the neck depth. For this is the back neckline and this is the front neckline. So for my front, I want to increase my neck depth to around 7 inches. So I have 7 inches here. So at this point, you can decide to draw out any neckline shape that you desire, but for me, I'm just going to make it a little bit of like a V shape. Okay, but at the same time, I'm going to make it curved. So I'm connecting from that 7 inches to my neck point here to form my new neck point. So here I'm just going to draw out like a V shape from here to up to like 2 inches, and then from there I'm going to redraw my shape. So basically, you just need to draw out whatever it is that you want to use for your neckline. So I'm just going to blend it. So I'm having like a U from here now, and then from here I just paint it to form like a fish shape. So once you're happy with what you have, you go in with your scissors and then you cut it out. So I've cut this out now, but before I remove this, I need to cut out facing for this. So to cut out facing, I'm just going to bring in another fabric, place it underneath it, and cut out my facing before. So for the facing, I have this piece of fabric, and I'm cutting the facing for the front and back also together. There's not going to be any joining on the shoulder. So you just fold your fabric into two like I have done. Then I'm going to raise this up. So this folded point here is what you're going to make to be on the fold point of your outfit also. So I'm just going to raise it up now and then place this underneath it, and I'll cut out exactly this shape, the exact shape that I have here for my front and back neckline. I'm just going to trace it out for the facing, so you can see how simple it is to do this. So now you go in with your scissors and then you cut this. So after cutting it now, I'm going to remove my main fabric now, and then I'm going to shape out this facing. So you can shape it anyhow you want, depending on how long you want the facing to be, but it's advisable for your facing to be long so that it's not going to be poking out. So I have 6 inches length here for the front, and the back here I have around 4 inches, which is fine for me. So here I'm just going to maintain the 4 inches for the back up to the shoulder point here, and then from there I'm just going to connect it to the 6 inches that I have for my front. So you can do this anyhow you want, or you can just use it in full like this, whatever it is that you want. Just make sure that what you have is going to be enough, and then you can also use your hemming glue to glue it to your bodies. So I'm cutting this out now. I just extended it a bit, and then I'm going to cut it out. So the first thing I'm going to do now is to use this facing to turn my neckline before we shape the side of the bubu dress. So now I've cut this out, and this is what the facing looks like. So you can see the neckline that we have there. So to turn it, I'm just going to bring in my actual bubu dress. So right side facing the right side, I'll pin my facing and then go over to the sewing machine and then turn it. So this is the right side of the outfit, and then the right side of my my facing also. So I'm going to pin them against each other now, and then I'll take it to the sewing machine, and then I'll sew and turn it out. Okay, so this is pinned round now. I forgot to mention that whatever neckline measurement that you're working with, remember this is not going to have a zipper, so just make sure that it is wide enough to go through the head. So now I'll go over to the machine and sew this round. Okay, so I've sewn it round. Now the next thing is for me to notch it with my scissors, and then I'm going to turn it out. So when you're notching this, be careful not to cut through your seams. So now also on the edge of my pattern of my dress, sorry, I folded it in by like half an inch. You can leave the selvage like that if you don't mind, or you can just use a serger to weave it. Also on the hemline, I also hem it like this so that everything will be neatly concealed. So here now I'm going to notch it, and then I'll turn it out for us to see. So after notching it round, now you just fold in your facing inwards like this, and then you give it a very good press. So like I said, if you have a hemming glue, you can place it in between the facing and the main fabric before you iron it, so that it can face it together for you, because you don't want it poking out. So now this is what the neckline is looking like. Now the next thing is for us to just shape this. So I'm going to shape it by folding my fabric into two like this, just like we started when we were folding it, and then I'm going to fold it into four again. So now it's folded into two again. On the right side this time, you can see that my fabric is on the right side, so I'm just going to explain the shaping for us using this pattern that I have here. So I'm going to use my bust measurement, okay, to get where my armhole is going to stop. So the bust I'm working with here is 42 inches. So the by 4 is going to give me 10.5. So this is the paper. I'm just going to measure, assume that I'm measuring my 10.5. Remember that is the quarter of my bust measurement, because this fabric is folded into 4. So I'm assuming this point is where I have my 10.5. So from here I'm going to measure my armhole measurement plus 1 or 2 inches, depending on how free you want it to be. So the actual armhole I'm working with is 9 inches, and then I'm going to be adding 1 inch to it, so that's going to give me 10 inches. Again, I'm going to assume this is 10 inches. So on this point here, that is where I'm going to start my shaping. So I already have my bust point there. So now the next thing is to measure my waist, which is my half length. So now the half length I'm working with is around 16 inches. So this is the paper. I'm just going to assume this to be my half length area, and then on that point I'm going to take my waist measurement. So you measure your waist and divide it by 4 to get that circumference, and then you're going to measure it. You're going to make it here, but because this is like a free bubu dress, if you don't want it too shaped, you can just add half an inch or 1 inch for ease, so that it's not going to be too tight. Then you connect your bust to your waist like this. Again, from the shoulder point you measure your hip, and then I'm going to assume my hip to be here, and then you divide your hip by 4 and take the circumference there again, and then I'm going to connect like this also. So now from my hem, from the hem I'm just going to go upwards by 10 inches, okay, because it needs to have a slit so that I can walk easily. So you can go upwards by 10 inches or 15 inches. So I'm going to assume that this is where the 10 inches stops, and then I'm just going to maintain the hip measurement that I have up to that point. So now when you want to sew it, you open up your bubu dress like this. So this is the front and this is the back, and then you just sew along this line that you have here, and then you stop here. I hope you understand that. So that is for the first side. So once you have the seam of the first side, it's going to assist you in shaping the second side, because you just need to divide those measurements by 2 now. So now the seam that you already have here is going to guide you. So remember, when we were doing the quarter, we divided by 4. The 42 gave me 10.5. So now if I want to shape the other side, I'm just, remember, the fabric is no longer folded into 4. We have opened it up, so it folded into 1, 2, just the front and back. So which means you're going to be dividing your circumference measurements by 2. So now 42 divided by 2 is going to give me 21 inches. So now from where this seam stop here, I'm just going to measure 21 inches and mark. For my waist also, I'll divide my waist by 2 and then I'll mark. For the hip, I'll divide by 2 and mark, and then I'm going to use that to shape the other side also, and then you sew it on the right side. So So now this I'm going to do on the main fabric now. So now my armhole measurement is 9 inches, like I said. So you can add 1, 2 or 3 inches depending on how free you want it to be. So as me, I'm adding 2 inches to it, I'm going to mark it on 11 inches. So where I have that 11 inches mark, I'm going to divide 42, which is my bust measurement, by 4, because this is still folded into 4. I'm shaping the first side first. So that's 10.5 inches. You can add half an inch is to it. So on that point now, I've made my first marking. So now my half length measurement is 16 inches. So I have 16 inches here, and on that point the waist I'm working with is 34 inches. 34 divided by 2 is going to give me, so 34 divided by 4 is 8.5. I'm adding half an inch seam to it, allowance to it. So that's going to give me 9 inches for the ease. So from there now, I'm going to connect this, and then from my shoulder again, I'm going to take my hip measurement, the hip line. The hip line is 26 inches. So the hip I'm working with is 46 inches. 46 inches divided by 4 is going to give me around 11.5 inches. So I'm going to add half an inch is, and then again I'm going to connect this. Okay, so I can just increase my waist because I don't want it too tiny there. So I added like another extra half an inch to my waistline there, and then this measurement that I have here, this 12 inches, I'm going to take it all the way down, and then I'll stop like 12 inches from my hem, or 13 inches. So this is 13 inches away from my hemline. So I'm just going to redraw the 12 inches measurement there, and then I'll connect it like this. Okay, so this is what I'm going to go over to my machine to sew. So I'll sew this now and bring it back to show. So remember, when you're sewing it, you detach your front part from your back. You're sewing just the front like this. Okay, you open it up like this and just sew just the, you're not sewing the 4. What I mean by detaching is, remember we folded it into 4, so you're going to remove it to just have the front and back of one side, and then you sew. So I've gone ahead to sew this now like I explained. So to shape the other side, I'm just going to turn it, and the seam that I have here is what is going to guide me. So now again, I'm going to take my armhole measurement plus 2, which was 11 inches, and from the shoulder point I'm going to measure the 11 inches downwards, and then on that point from where my seam here is, I'm going to divide my bust by 2. 42 by 2 is going to give me 21 inches, and then I'll add my 1 inch seam allowance. Remember, I added half to this side, so I'm going to be needing half for that side also. So that's going to make it 1. So I'm measuring 22 inches here, and then I'm going to mark it on that 11 inches mark. So again, I'm going to take my half length measurement, which was 16 inches, and then I'm going to divide 34 by 2. So 34 by 2 is going to give me 17 inches, and then again I'm going to add my ease. So it's just as simple as that, and then I'll mark it. And then for the hip again, you measure your hip line, which was 26 inches, and then divide your hip measurement by 2, and then you shape it. So once you get to those points, you take your chalk now, and then you connect all of your points together. And then on the hem, I'm going to go upwards by 13 inches here, and then I'm going to measure the hip line again. So you can just eyeball it and then connect it to that point. So now I'll take this to the sewing machine also, and then sew, and the bubu dress is ready. Okay, so the bubu is shaped now, and this is what it looks like. You can see how simple it is to make this. So you can actually shape it anyhow you want. You can make it free, or you can use your actual measurements, but just add few inches because it's not supposed to be too tight. So this is what it looks like, and you can see how simple it is to make this. I hope you enjoyed making this tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.